Turns out some people are a tad uncomfortable with the Trump presidency, and by that I mean they're suffering from TAD, Trump anxiety disorder. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angle brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, I want to refer to an article that I found this week that really alarmed me. This was, it's on a website that says CBC California. I don't know if that is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's California branch. But one paragraph says, under the subheading, The Symptoms, in a 2017 essay for a book co-edited by a couple of psychiatrists from Harvard and Yale, they called the condition Trump anxiety disorder, distinguishing it from generalized anxiety disorder because symptoms were specific to the election of Trump and the resultant unpredictable socio-political climate. And just to show you how bad this can be, there's one woman named Gail, who they don't give her last name, obviously, because you don't want to out these sufferers, said, "It reminds me of how I felt after 9/11. Stephen Green, about 26% of Republicans polled after the election considered the political climate to be a source of stress, compared with 72% of Democrats who felt the same way. Wow. What do you think accounts for the disparity between that 27% of Republicans and 72% of Democrats?"
Well, they're Democrats.
Because Democrats.
Yeah.
Because Democrats.
Yeah. What they've elevated, this has been going on for about 50 years now, the whole victim mentality, where the more you demonstrate your virtue by your victimhood. And this is where transsectionality comes from, where it's not just, you're not enough of a minority if you're a woman. You're not enough of a minority if you are a woman of color. You might be enough of a minority if you are a gay woman of color. But if you are a handicapped, transgendered woman of color, wow, you have won the victimhood lottery, and you, by no effort of your own, are now the most virtuous person on the planet, and aren't you darn proud of that? And so how do you prove that you're virtuous if you're just an ordinary American who votes Democrat? Well, you prove that you're virtuous by how upset you get by politics. Oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. Look at my virtue. And that's what it is. It's not an actual anxiety. It is it's clinical virtue signaling is what it is.
Now, Bill Whittle, in fairness, I think that there has been a high degree of misdiagnosis from the right to this condition on the left, because for several years now, we've been hearing that there was this prevalent condition called Trump derangement syndrome. And frankly, it was not expressed with, I don't think, the degree of compassion that compassionate conservatives ought to use. It was more like an insult. But are you thinking that maybe it was just that the people on the right had misdiagnosed Trump anxiety disorder as Trump derangement syndrome?
Now, I can straighten this out for you. In a story, one of the stories that we did with Steve's Lightning Round show, the person who took a pickaxe to Donald Trump's star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood has Trump derangement syndrome, and all of the liberals who walked over the thing and started crying prior to even taking the pickaxe to it, they have Trump anxiety disorder. So you can see clearly that there's a noticeable difference in these clinical behaviors. But aside from the fact that the left is all about emotions and feeling, and about the fact that they're, we were talking about that on another episode this week, about the guy taking an axe, a pick to Trump's star on the Walk of Fame, and you said, I think it was you, Scott, you said, it's so juvenile, it's so adolescent, it's so unformed. Evan Sayed has a tremendous book called The Kindergarten of Eden. Yeah. He makes it very clear. The left basically is proud of the fact, they'll tell you they're proud of the fact that they think a really important book is that everything I learned about life I learned in kindergarten. That's pretty much them. That pretty much is them. So it doesn't surprise me that they're anxious about this. And I think the giant disparity in numbers is not just a reflection of the fact that some people, was it 25% of Republicans, round numbers, and 75% of Democrats? They're kind of nuts to begin with. I just mean that to say, when I saw a story last week of them cleaning up the mess in Portland after they tried to occupy ICE for a couple months. They had to send in hazmat teams, because of all the human waste and filth, and they built a wall around their compound and wouldn't let people in unless they followed the rules and all the rest of this ironic kind of stuff. But I really asked myself, I said, if you were to take 100 people at random from an Occupy protest and 100 people at random from a Tea Party protest and send pairs of them to 100 different psychiatrists or psychologists and say, this is not about politics, got nothing to do with it, we just want you to do a fundamental analysis of these two people, I think 100 different psychologists would figure out that the conservatives are more adult, more balanced, more sane in, I'd say 100% of the cases. Wouldn't bet my life on that being 100%, but I bet my car on it. And they're just kind of nuts to begin with, you see?
Well, believe it or not, and this I'm sure will stun our longtime viewers, I actually feel bad for folks who see the world this way and who are suffering, what some medical professionals were now referring to as Trump anxiety disorder, because it's really hard to kind of snap out of it. I mean, there was a great sketch that Bob Newhart was part of a number of years ago, where this woman said that she was really worried about, she had this anxiety about being buried alive in a box, and she just would always think about being buried alive in a box. And it's a long, drawn-out sketch, but essentially Bob Newhart told her to take out a tablet and a pencil because he was going to say two very important words that she would want to write down so she could make sure to remember them. And she gets the tablet out. She's all excited that she's going to get the answer to her problems. And then he said, "You ready?" And he leans forward and he goes, "Stop it! S-T-O-P, period, I-T, period, whatever." It was like, just stop it. Well, you can't say something. Somebody who has anxiety about anything, you can't snap them out of it by saying, hey, the facts don't support your problem, or, just go live your life. It's really not that bad, or whatever. And there were a lot of people during the Obama administration on the right, frankly, who, they wouldn't describe it as anxiety, but I would describe it as they spent a great deal of time being angry about something over which they had no control. And I guess what I would say to both sets of people is, it's good to be engaged, it's good to be involved, it's good to care about your country, but put the smartphone down every once in a while. Stop scrolling through the headlines. Every once in a while, step away from the computer and spend some time with your kids, and take the dog for a walk, and go fishing, and just go buy some Pop-Tarts at Walmart. Do something that is not so all-consuming for you that everything that you think about brings you this level of anxiety. Now, in reality, the facts don't support the anxiety that they're suffering from, but I think they just need to be able to get away from that world for a little while to realize that there's a lot more to life than being concerned about one guy who lives on Pennsylvania Avenue and what he's doing. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.